and he couldn't keep up with it, and he got into debt, and Robert Nolan took the cable company as payment. That's sad, very, very sad. Well, Nolan wanted the franchises in those 4 municipalities I mentioned: Fort Edward, South Glens Falls, Queensbury, and Hudson Falls. He wanted that franchise, and the way he got it was to show that he could do public access. And how did he do public access? By having Glendora interview the mayor of Hudson Falls and so forth. That got him the franchises. It was a very interesting thing that Glens Falls, guess who owned that cable system? Guess who? Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan saw the doors closing at CBS, and he wanted to see what he could do in cable TV, what kind of an investment, and so he had this system, cable TV system, in Glens Falls. I lived in Glens Falls, but my cable TV system was in Queensbury. Now, this turned out to be a very, very interesting period, because all of the people in Glens Falls remembered the SS Glendora from WRGB in 1956. 55, I guess, 55, 56, through 1962. And they were all fans of it, and it was really nice. Wherever you go, they'd say, aren't you the Glendora who had the TV show? Yes, I am. Just as people today say that, 50 years later. And I went to Manhattan every Monday, and I interviewed people on careers in people at ABC television and NBC television, and people in the business of television in Manhattan. And that was quite an adventure to drive the 1950 Dodge from Glens Falls down to Manhattan. Whee! Quite an interesting experience just to find a parking space. But we brought it off. We did it. Now, what else happened at Glens Falls? A lot of funny jokes. Nolan had an excellent voice, and he made a good sports announcer, a good play-by-play announcer, and I invited him to do many of the shows. And I have those on 8mm tape in the archives up around 2W, RSTUV, up around there, and I'm only on archive 2 right now, so it's at least 10 months away that I can be showing you those. Every month I show you 3 half hours from 1988, the archives of a chat with Glendora. Just a footnote, and it's in the future, but it has the most emotionalism right now. If I tell you that for some reason, and when I left Valley Cablevision, everybody wanted to know where I was going, and I wouldn't tell them. I had some reason for not telling them. And that seemed to bother George Reynolds, and I would not tell him where I was going. And one day at Glens Falls, I get a mysterious telephone, and it was George Reynolds proving to me that he had found out where I went. Why did he do that? Well, the footnote is this. Here now, in 2009, Jeffrey Reynolds had sold his cable system, cable TV system, in the Seymour area, in the valley, the Naugatuck Valley. He had sold it. But to this day, right here in Hudson, New York, and across the river over to Greene County and Ulster County and Clover Rock and Livingston, and I think there's about 16 municipalities. James Reynolds the younger son, has kept his. And he's the only person I know in the whole cable TV arena who, as an individual, has held on to his own cable TV system. And I saw a picture of him in the Advertiser newspaper. And my goodness, he looks exactly like his father, George. Now what year is it? It's around 1973 and 74. And I started up my program on public access TV in Manhattan. And this is funny. I don't think there was any public access TV in 1960. I just don't think there was. I think it started in 70, 71, 72 when I started. And Manhattan Cable TV had 2 public access TV stations, I believe, Channel J and Channel H, and they had named their channels alphabetically, not numerically, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and it was Manhattan Cable TV, MCTV, and Time had bought it from poor, ravaged Charles Dolan, who fled to Long Island, made a tremendous success of Long Island. And they were so glad to have some programs. So they welcomed me, and I had a half-hour program on one of the public access channels in Manhattan. And I also had it on up in Teleprompter, the north end of Manhattan. 2 different cable systems. The next move, I stayed with Glens Falls a year. That was the contract time. It was fun. It was cold. And when you see this old footage, you'll see how cold it was. And then I came home to Buffalo. And it's around 1974. Or 1975. But I don't really remember anything much as coming out of those years, except I guess I was finishing the book Physics and Love, and finishing the book, no, I guess I'd finished all the other books. Love is the Answer to Everything, and yeah, all the other books were finished, Be Perfect. And I started to see a possibility in packaging TV ads. For instance, I would go get the information from the library, from the Standard Directory of Advertisers and other places, and I'd call the TV stations and I would talk to the sales department, and I'd find out how much they were charging for airtime per 30 seconds, and I would find out the name of the chief executive officer of a company that I thought had a good product and a product that I could believe in and that I could present on TV. And I packaged Glendora TV ads. And for instance, one package was 10 ads on the some on the 6 p.m. news in Manhattan, and some on the Today Show, and some on, well, that would be about it. And I could package this for $10,000, and it would be something like 10 ads, and it included everything. It included the airtime, the production of the TV commercial, the writing of the copy, and getting it cleared through the television station. What they call continuity, for some reason. And I sold such a package to the New York, New England Macintosh Apple Institute in Westfield, Massachusetts. And the commercials were beautiful. Every commercial had a joke in it, and then it had the suggestion to eat more apples, buy more apples. And these commercials worked out very well, and I got the $10,000 check, and I got it ahead and in advance, and I did all of my work. There was always integrity, and I did it all. And then I went to their meeting up in some place in New England. Well, that was cold too, into winter time. And the executive director of the Apple Institute had had a great big screen projector, and he was able to put that little commercial on a big projection screen. And I saw it, and all the apple growers saw it, because the apple growers keep the organization going by their contributions for the membership. I sold such a package to 3M, Minnesota Mining Manufacturing, for a copy machine. This was a copy machine that used a very flimsy and special paper, but it was an instant copy, and it was portable, and it only cost $25. And I marketed that product by going door to door with it, and by making commercials on TV with it. These commercials were in Buffalo, and I hired WBEN TV to make the commercials. I sold such a package to Tombstone Pizza. By the way, one of the best pizzas, frozen pizzas around. And that was $10,000. And the New York, New England Apple Institute renewed and wanted more for $16,000. I should get out those checks, copies of those checks, and show them to you, made out to Glendora. Yes, Glendora, nothing more. And it was nice. And I certainly was true to my word, and I meant to be true to my word, and I guess people who are honest can trust other people. If you can trust yourself, you can trust other people. I sold such a package to New Jersey Peaches, to Doug Z., who was head of the New Jersey Peach Association. And that was a $10,000 package, and he would come back every spring. And I got them the packages, the television commercials on the New York channels. Secret to it all was something that I had learned very early. If you want the product, to get the product into the stores like A&P in those days, and Finest, F-I first, N-A, National, ST stores, Finest. If you wanted to get them in the big stores like that, and the big distribution and the big sales, you did it by telling the buyer that you would give him a store tag at the end of the commercial. So I learned how to make store tags and put them at the end of the commercials. For instance, the Peaches commercials, the Apples commercials. I went to trade shows in Chicago at McCormick Place, and I found quite a few sponsors there. I was very disappointed in Wheatina. Wheatina is a product that I believe in. It's pure protein, it's pure wheat, and it's a good cereal. And my mother had brought us up on it, Wheatina, cream of wheat, there was another one there. Oatmeal, but it was Wheatina and cream of wheat and something else. Maltex. Anyway, I got Wheatina interested in it, and I gave him this tremendous package price. And it was a product that should be on TV, because it was good for people. and he wanted it, but he fell through. The reason? It wasn't anything I did or anything he did. He just plainly didn't have the money. I went to trade shows down in New York at Columbus Circle before the New York Convention Center was opened, down around 23rd Street on the west side. There I met a man from 3M, and he had the copy machine, and I tried to market that for him. It was a very good business, and it fit a notch. You know, it was well, it was just very unusual. Snyder's potato chips was another one, another $10,000 check. And so that was Glendora TV ads in 1976. And then came, I was a vegetarian, I was a vegan, and from the Seventh-day Adventist health food stores in the church, they always had a health food store in the back, I bought many, many vegetarian products. Vegetarian hot dogs, vegetarian sausages, vegetarian ham, vegetarian burgers, hamburgers, vegetarian turkey, vegetarian chicken, vegetarian bologna. They had about 40 vegetarian products made from textured vegetable protein, which is a soy compound. And I love these vegetarian hot dogs in a can. They were called Vegelinks. And I called up Mr. James Hagel, who invented these products and who marketed them as Worthington Foods, because it was in Worthington, Ohio. And I told Mr. Hagel that I could get his product into the great big New York market, and that I could get it into A&P and First National. And I did. They bought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases and had great, great, great big displays in the stores. And I would go to these 20 or 40 stores, Finest and A&P, in the New York market, and I would promote the product there with a personal appearance and with a big display. And my mother and Nancy Crosby and Franklin and myself, we went out to Worthington, Ohio, and we met Mr. and Mrs. James Hagel. Of course, they were Seventh-day Adventists, but they had done a great, great job on these Worthington food products that were meatless meats. Also, in 1976, the sales manager at Channel 5, New York City, WNEW-TV, Metro Media, I presented to him a program that was 2 minutes long, 1 minute of commercial and 1 minute of jokes. And he went out and sold that to a friend of his in Long Island. He was from Great Neck, Long Island, Rich Great Neck. His first name was Al. And I remember he had a Mercedes-Benz. And we went out to see the owner of Bohack Supermarkets. And the owner of Bohack Supermarkets bought that package. It's the most interesting program that I've ever known on TV. It was 2 minutes long. It was live. It came on at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, right after Midday Live with Bill Boggs. And I would tell these jokes, 5 of them, in a minute. And then I would do the commercial. And it was something like a 13-week contract, and it was Monday through Friday, every week. Well, that was a joy. And that was a great creation. This is a very active and successful and remunerative year of 1976. And I was living in Manhattan at the time, although we still had our home in Buffalo. Franklin was still a reporter. By now he was a City Hall reporter, one of them, for the Buffalo Evening News. And my mother was living with us. So we made a lot of money. And it was fun doing the commercials. And it was fun that so many people saw them and talked about them. And the whole concept of putting a joke in every commercial was brand new, and it was successful. So I continued that in 1977 and 1978, and all the time, folks, I'm looking for that greatness, that holy grail, that oneness with God, trying to find it and never getting anywhere near it. But they was always pushing me and always nagging me, and I was looking for it and being very, very busy. It didn't get much of a healthy start or growth or continuation, I should say. And I did this in 1977. 1978, I wrote the Glendora Happy Book. And that is such a great, great, great reminder and helper. Finding the real meaning of life, finding your oneness with God. It is so good, and it's good to this day. It's very elementary. It's about counting pure thoughts, about counting blessings, but this works. This gets you up there. It's a fundamental step, and it gets you up there. And I published the Glendora Happy Book on plastic cover. Be Perfect was all plastic. The pages were plastic, the covers were plastic, the binding was plastic. That was 1967, Be Perfect. So 1978, finally, the Glendora Happy Book was published, and I had great hopes for that. I wanted it to help people, at least to get as far as I had got, even though I hadn't got to the top. I was a long ways from it. That's 1979. 1980 is when we bought the 1980 Lincoln. We had, as I told you, a 1950 Dodge and a 1956 Dodge. And I maintained those cars, trying to keep them in top running condition. And I was in a garage practically once a week, every week, trying to keep those cars up. So I said to Franklin, let's get a new car, a car that we don't have to take to the garage. The 1950 Lincoln had only 125,000 miles, and the 1956 Lincoln had 125,000 miles. And they ran beautifully, but they always had something that had to be fixed. Well, what a myth that turned out to be. And I says, as long as we're going to get a new car, let's get the best one that America makes, and that was a Lincoln. And that year the Cadillac was a tank. I don't know why anybody would buy one. And a budget rent-a-car was renting Lincolns. And I said, well, that's a good way to find out if we want a Lincoln. So I went over to rent one, and they wouldn't rent it to me because we didn't have a credit card. Franklin and I never believed in credit or debit. We never owed anybody. We never borrowed money. We never loaned money. So I couldn't rent the Lincoln. And I called up Bob Russo, who was the sales manager of the biggest radio station in Buffalo, WBEN, B-E-N, Buffalo Evening News, owned by them. And I asked him if I could borrow his credit card so I could go rent this Lincoln. And he says, you don't need a credit card. He says, you are in the media. That's when that word first started out, up around 1980. "You are in the media. I will pick you up in 18 minutes. And there he was outside in his Cadillac, which was a diesel, and it's a worse sounding car. And he took me down to the manager of Ford Motor Company for the Western New York division. And they were both cigar smoking types. And the two of them were joking and laughing, and they took me out to the parking lot, and here was this 1980 Lincoln Continental Mark VI. It was the year that Ford decided to make the Mark the luxury car. And not only was it a Mark, it was a town car, and it was a Continental. And it was maroon. And it was luxury through and through. And this cigar smoking manager handed me the keys, and he said, "Keep it as long as you want." Well, I drove off on it. It wasn't 2 miles, but I realized that was a car we wanted. The upholstery was velvet, like beautiful maroon. The rugs were this thick. It had premium sound, 6 speakers of sound. It had a trip log. It would tell you how many miles you were getting a gallon. It would tell you how many miles you had remaining on your trip. It would tell you the estimated time of arrival. What a car. And the odometer was digital readout. And the gas tank was digital readout. All these things in 1980. And it had the Venturi carburetor. And the Venturi carburetor was a great concept. But Ford had much trouble with it. It was a regulated carburetor that saved you gasoline. And by the way, that car was getting 18 miles a gallon. That was pretty good, because the 1979 Lincoln was getting about 8 miles a gallon. And such a ride. Such a ride. Had a 351 Windsor engine. And you couldn't hear a thing outside. No, anybody talked to you outside, you had no idea what they were saying. You couldn't hear the going by traffic. It was the quiet, silent, smooth, perfect ride. How much was it? $18,000 cash. We couldn't find one.